Greetings, everyone. Joining me on today's Next Gen North podcast is Professor Steve Rogers and Dr. Warren Hunt. Led by CDU, Steve and Warren collaborated on a research project to deliver shelf-stable foods. The technology has applications across food security, defence, and will contribute to the continued economic development of a variety of territory industries. We hope you enjoy the episode. All right, Professor Steve Rogers, Dr. Warren Hunt. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the Next Gen North podcast.
Oh, great to be here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So it's the first time that we've had two guests in here, so we'll see how that dynamic goes. But you look like two friendly gentlemen, so I think we'll be fine. I understand you, or actually, first of all, am I able to just refer to you by your first name? Is that just the easiest way to?
Yeah, look, just call me Steve. That's fine.
Beautiful.
I'm good with that.
Awesome. I understand you've been doing some exciting work in the food science space, but which I'm really keen to get into because it sounds very interesting. But before we do that, we like to get to know our guests a little bit. Their background, their personal background, their professional background. So, Steve, maybe if you could just kick us off.
Sure.
Where are you from? What's your motivation for getting into this space? That sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Where am I from? I grew up in Birmingham, Solihull, in the UK. Did all my university study there, and then came out to Australia in a very long time ago now, 1992.
Right.
To a postdoctoral research fellowship with CSIRO and Adelaide Uni, and never went back. Well, gone back for holiday, but never moved back. My background is I'm a microbial biogeochemist, and so I've worked in areas such as developing new techniques to decontaminate industrial contaminated sites using bacteria and fungi, agricultural research. I spent 10 years in the mining industry running research centres in mineral exploration and mineral processing. Then did a bit of a career shift and spent 5 years as the CEO of an Aboriginal technology company in Alice Springs called the Centre for Appropriate Technology. So that was pretty interesting. We span off a couple of joint venture commercial companies, one in satellite ground stations, and then came to CDU about 4 years ago. My wife grew up in Darwin.
All right.
So she was always keen to come back one day, and I sort of fell in love with Darwin when I was in Alice Springs. We had an office up here. So when the opportunity came up at CDU, I sort of grabbed it. So I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research and Innovation. So I'm the senior executive that is responsible for all of the research, academic research activities at CDU. And what we'll be talking about today is one of those research projects that Warren and a team worked on. CDU is probably one of the smallest universities in Australia, but when it comes to research, we're probably 25th out of the 40 universities. So we seriously punch above our weight when it comes to our research output. Very research-intensive university. Mm-hmm. We are the University of the Northern Territory. We are here, when it comes to research, to be addressing those issues that we face in the Northern Territory, Northern Australia, and remote regions across the world. So we do work offshore quite a lot. Our real, main areas of research where what we do is absolutely world class, and we don't say that. Mm-hmm. That's other people, assessing our research are in tropical health, environment, engineering, First Nations, community development, policy, etc., etc. So I'm really proud to work for CDU. I think all Territorians should be proud of Charles Darwin University. It's an incredible university. Really looking forward to talking about this food tech project that we've worked on to you today.
Great.
Thank you.
So was it your partner that brought you to the Territory? Was it meeting her, or how did that sort of unfold?
Oh, look, I've spent my whole career working in research, and in fact, my wife didn't just grow up in Darwin. She grew up in Oodnadatta and Daly Waters and some really, out of the way places. So when an opportunity came up with a job in Alice Springs, we thought, why not? Let's go for it.
Great.
And, been in the Territory now nearly 10 years and love it. Wouldn't live anywhere else.
Great. Thank you. Warren, how about your good self?
It depends how far back you want to go. But,
as far back as you want to go, mate.
I'm just a farmer's son originally. So grew up on a dairy farm in southeast Queensland, a little place called Peachester in the highland country behind the Sunshine Coast.
Yep. Just move that mic up if you don't mind a little bit.
Yeah. So
Yep, perfect. Thanks, mate.
So that's my origins, and went through University of Queensland. Yes, graduated there with my bachelor's degree, and went into the primary industry sector. So one way or another, I've spent my entire life working in the primary sector.
Yep.
Either as a young fella initially on the family farm, or then working for various agencies, both government and non-government. I've worked outside of government for quite a lot of my life in industry-owned research development organisations.
Yep. Just quickly, are you able to just explain what the primary industries are for our audiences? Just quickly.
I've worked across extensive grazing sectors in Queensland. I've worked in the sugar industry.
Yep.
Where I ran integrated pest management programs. I've worked in Tasmania, where I was employed by the University of Tasmania to run a sheep program for 4.5 years.
Yep.
On behalf of AWI, and then I found my way north to the Territory. I spent a lot of my life working in the field of agricultural extension, which is that interface between research and development and the end users, which is typically farmers or graziers and the services sector and agriculture. But probably for the last 9 years, I've been working in the sphere of policy, and that's where the agriculturalists sort of got dragged or morphed into this food technology space. Steve can talk to the origins about the project a bit more, but it essentially came out of a federal government review into agricultural workforce labour, and there was a lot of consultations done in the Territory, as part of that national review, and then Steve followed up after that with an agenda to actually raise an initiative through the university. So I'll let him speak to that. So,
please.
Yeah. So, how did we go down this journey together?
Yeah. What's the genesis?
Okay. So, I came to Charles Darwin University in January 2020. So I had a really interesting introduction because about 4 weeks after I arrived here, COVID struck. And I don't need to talk about that. So one of the first initiatives in terms of the role of research directors I looked at is what are those key industries in the Northern Territory where CDU should be working with? And, we can talk about mining, renewable energy, but a key area that we were doing some work with in the broader environmental field was agriculture. Okay. But we weren't actually doing a lot of, let's call it, research that is about the actual production systems themselves.
Right.
And what we're going to talk about today is what we refer to as value adding. So, you can grow a mango, you can stick it in a box and send it down to, Coles and Woolies or whatever, or export it.
Yep.
Or you can grow a mango, you can turn it into mango juice, you can turn it into freeze-dried mango, et cetera, and that's what we mean by value adding.
Yep.
So we weren't doing a lot of research in that area. So there was probably two key initiatives that CDU was successful in launching. One was the project we're going to talk about today, the North Australia Food Technology Innovation Project. Yep. And the other one was to establish a new North Australia Agricultural Research Institute.
Okay.
There's a lot of agricultural research institutes around Australia, but there isn't one that's really focusing on agricultural production, whether it's growing mangoes, whether it's raising cattle, whether it's growing cotton in the Douglas Daly. So we felt that was a big gap. Now, these were federal government funded programs, very competitive, but we've got a good team in the Northern Territory, and I really want to stress the point about the team. So this wasn't just CDU going off and applying for Commonwealth government funding. The projects we're talking about here were a real partnership between CDU, the Northern Territory government, all of the peak agricultural industry bodies, so the Northern Territory Cattlemen's Association, NT Farmers, NT Seafood Council, So it was government, industry and the university coming together and then collectively going and securing funding from the government.
Great.
So one of those projects was the North Australian Food Technology Innovation Project. Now, why did we go for that? Well, the thing that always struck me when I was talking to Warren and his colleagues in the NTG or industry is, let's take an example. So Northern Territory grows just over 50% of the Australian mango crop. But a lot of that crop never gets to market. In fact, a lot of that crop basically goes to waste. And the reason why that crop goes to waste, there's nothing wrong with it, but the export markets and the supermarkets have very, very strict quality control. So your listeners who've bought a mango in Coles and Woolies, you know, they're all the same size. There's not a blemish on the skin. Then it's the same with our export markets. So, you know, collectively we felt, well, there's a lot of product out there. And it's the same with cattle. There's a lot of cattle that don't get into live export for various reasons, a whole range of other products that we produce in Northern Australia and the Territory. So we thought, number one, well, that's a bit of a shame. It's a bit of a waste. The other one is really about what we refer to as food security. Now, again, your listeners, particularly in the top end, last 2 wet seasons, Stuart Highway gets cut, the railway gets cut, and, you know, within 24 hours, there's no, you know, fresh fruit and veg in the supermarket. Timber Creek was cut off for months, you know. So in terms of our food security, because all of our manufactured food products come from down south, and we've got those very increasingly vulnerable transport links. Now at CDU, we also do a lot of work in climate change. And, you know, what we're starting to see is what's been predicted with respect to climate change is probably fewer extreme events like rainfalls and cyclones and that sort of thing. But those events that we do experience are far more intense, so more intense flooding, you know, and we've certainly seen that in the last 2 wet seasons. So food security is also an issue. So, and then the third one is really about economic development for Northern Australia. And if we can develop a value add industry, it not only gives us a route for that agricultural produce that currently doesn't go to market. It also creates jobs. It creates opportunities, particularly, you know, CDU considers itself to be the university for First Nations people, you know, 30% of our population. So we're very conscious about how do we develop, you know, workforce opportunities, economic opportunities for First Nations people, particularly in remote communities. And this potentially does that. And we can talk about that later if you want. So it was really a number of different reasons. I think the other one, and Warren, you might want to chip in here, is a unique statistic that very early on that I heard is something like 90% of Australia's combat rations. Is that right, Warren?
Oh, look, Australia's military contracts for combat rations are actually offshore. So field rations that soldiers, and sailors, airmen typically utilise during exercise operations actually produced offshore in New Zealand. So there's an opportunity loss for regional Australian manufacturing. You understand that the value add process, once you get into manufacturing of food, it's a big jobs multiplier. In fact, in OECD countries, there's not another sector that employs more people than food processing. Food manufacturing is the space where the jobs are. The nature of the project that CDU ran, we had a particular angle though. We didn't just look at, I suppose, generalised food processing. We actually honed in on a particular theme, and that is to look at advanced food processing to shelf stable. The shelf stable foods. Okay, I think that's an important qualifier. Like, we are a remote region. All right. So at the moment, if we look at our horticulture sector, it's viable because we've got early harvest window, we can exploit a market opportunity, and we can exploit it with premium product.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of waste product, as Steve talks about.
Yep.
All right.
So
In terms of our...
maybe we should just explain what we mean by shelf-stable food, Warren. That's
a fair point. Like shelf-stable is food that can be stored at ambient temperatures.
Right.
Typically, it's been treated in some fashion. There's a number of different techniques that can be used, and it can be stored at ambient temperature, room temperature, for extended periods of time. Now, the old school sort of language with that is, well, it's canning, isn't
goods,
it? Canned
That's the
goods.
first thing that comes to mind.
Like tin corned beef or whatever.
And military sort of
rations,
and that sort of thing.
dried jerky or whatever. Right? Okay, so so they're examples of shelf-stable food manufacture. But we thought, well, do we just raise a project to investigate those sort of legacy technologies and how we can apply them here?
Yep.
Or do we actually look at a project that still has that end target with regards to shelf-stable in mind, but in using advanced food manufacturing technologies?
Right.
Okay, we're not talking about boiling the meat in a can like Napoleonic era here. Like the Royal Navy did back 200 years ago. Like we're looking at more sophisticated means.
Right.
So I think maybe just to explain a bit more. I mean, your listeners are going to be familiar with some of these products. So you can go into the supermarket and you can get like lamb shanks in a bag that sit on the shelf.
Yep.
So it's quality product.
Like a vac sealed sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like vac sealed. Well, that's what we mean by shelf stable.
Yep.
So there are products on the market. A big part of the study that we undertook was actually looking at the economic analysis of what a potential market would look like.
Yep.
And I think I'm correct in saying, Warren, that this is one of the most rapidly growing food product areas, particularly in the Southeast Asian region, is shelf-stable products.
Right.
The reason why we went down this route primarily is if we're looking at food security, particularly in regional and remote areas, or for the military or whatever, we've got to face the fact that we do have issues with infrastructure, unreliable power supply, et cetera. So a nutritious product that you can store for long periods of time and that doesn't require refrigeration is very attractive. I mean, in fact, I think it's probably worth mentioning that the university had the Pakistani ambassador visit us last year, and we talked about this project.
Yep.
And since then, we've had a number of subsequent meetings with both His Excellency in Canberra and people who work with him.
Yep.
It's seen as being something that's very attractive to places like Pakistan, where most of the population doesn't even have electricity, so they don't have fridges. So how can we get, highly nutritious food out that has a long storage life? So it's got huge potential applications in terms of the broader international marketplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the territory, it does have some real advantages. Like we're a major, everyone knows we're a major cattle supplier into Asia, right? Let's not think about selling cows though. The business in which the livestock exporters are is in supply of red meat protein. Okay. Right, because we can do it competitively.
Yep.
Because we have a lot of it. We have economies of scale to be able to do it. So our advantage to Asia is that we can, the APAC region is the supply of red meat protein. And there's a number of ways to do that. At the moment, we're doing it on the hoof. We could also do it with manufactured products, shelf-stable products that can actually fit into different markets. Our market research, look, if we'd gone into this project and determined that after our market research that this was a dead duck, we would have reported on that, and we wouldn't be here today talking to you about it.
Sure.
But all the indicators are on the market research that we did is that the global demand for shelf-stable foods is growing. and that's in developed economies as well as undeveloped economies.
Right.
And that's hinged on two things. One is that there's an increasing desire or sense of urgency around food security.
Yep.
The other thing is the technologies are better, right? We've got improved technologies now. And those growth areas are in meat products, and they're in plant products, and they're in wet products and dried products.
Right.
So whatever metric we used, whatever category we wanted to investigate,
Yep.
all the signals were positive. So considering that the APAC region has something like 20-odd million children that are undernourished and stunted in their growth, typically, and that's often because they don't have enough red meat protein in their diet. Here's a window of opportunity. We've got over 375 million people in our region that are generally undernourished, much of the time. There's another opportunity. So, and another reason why do we look at shelf stable? Well, even if we wanted to sell domestically, right, and so some of our second grade mango produce or other horticultural produce, we're a little bit too distant from our domestic markets to do fresh cuts, even if we want to value add those second grade mangoes.
Yep.
Right. But if we can produce it shelf stable, then we can provide a quality product.
Yep.
As well. So, look. So we looked at markets and products. We looked at the supply chains. The real question was, well, could we sustain any commercial production here? Scales. Is there, how many livestock are going into that? That's out of spec for our existing markets. We have live export at the moment. We have cattle that go interstate, into feedlots. We have restocking in the territory. We have restocking external to the territory. But how many actually get turned into? How many aren't in spec and go into the manufacturing market? That's what we're interested in. We got a good handle on that now. We didn't know that before.
Okay.
We know the approximate losses in your second and third grade products in the horticulture sector. What can we do with that? So, there's some scale.
Yeah.
We could. We do have actually commercial scale in terms of feedstocks potentially to support shelf-stable manufacturing here at a commercial level.
I think the other thing is, and one thing that we looked at, and we're going to be doing a bit more further work on this in the near future, is if you establish a food manufacturing sector, you actually stimulate the growth of new crops. So a great example is Tasmania.
Right.
Tasmania has now got a huge horticultural sector. Why is that? The introduction of refrigeration and snap freezing. So back in the 50s, 1950s or whatever, when they introduced that, it absolutely drove the expansion of their sector. So, going back to what Warren's saying, we are a long way from markets. Getting fresh produce to markets involves a significant, not only economic cost, but if we're, an environmental cost, the production of greenhouse gases through trucking or whatever, if you can actually transform that material here, you cut all of that back. But what our sort of work has generally shown, our expanding horticultural sector in the territory, which already is pretty exciting. You've got Singleton Station down north of Alice Springs looking at large-scale horticultural enterprise there.
Yep.
You've got a very successful, basically First Nations run watermelon production around Alicarun, which is just south of Tennant Creek.
Yep.
They're now producing commercial garlic crops. Now this is great. This is jobs for the local Aboriginal people. It's revenue into the local towns and First Nations corporations. If they've got another market, if they could say, right, we can now start supplying garlic and potatoes or whatever, and you can grow these things there.
Yep.
And as Warren said earlier, the great advantage there is you can grow them and get a crop when down south they're still freezing because it's the middle of winter.
Yep.
So there's that broader impact of a food processing sector in a shelf-stable process. You actually start to grow that primary production sector, as Warren referred. So, new crops, new farms, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So it seems like there's a lot of applications. You referred to getting our military rations from New Zealand. So there's got to be defence implications. Geopolitically, our neighbours to the north, things aren't exactly stable there. If we were to enter into a war and we were to get somehow cut off from New Zealand, that's 90% of our military rations that are cut off in an instant. So there seems like there's a lot of different applications for these sorts of technologies.
There certainly are. And when you think about the fact that Australia grows enough food to feed 80 or 90 million people, and that's why we have such a strong export market for our agricultural production, because there's only 28 million of us.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot of opportunities, but I think, we're really just focusing on Northern Australia and particularly the Northern Territory. That was our remit, that was our focus.
Right.
And we think and I think it's fair to say that our industry partners also see the opportunity.
Yep.
You might want to comment on, some of the work with the Seafood Council and the fishing industry that we did as part of this project, Warren.
Well, that's, look, others actually took the lead on that. But to say, with seafood, for example, right, I'll give you a bit of an example here, talking to local fishermen. They tell you, well, each time we go out, we'll throw, 2 or 3 tonne of northern spotted sardines over the side. Right, okay, well, what does that loss equate to? Well, the landed price of a northern spotted sardine is about $3 a kilo. But I don't know whether you've been into the supermarket and have a look at some of the boutique, they're called overpressure retort processed type fish products in plastic, right?
Right.
Sort of, that's retailing for $90 odd a kilo, right? Just a few grams. I think there might be 40 grams of raw fish fillet, but it's been processed. It's cooked. It's sterile state.
Yep.
But there's an opportunity wanting, but we don't have the capability here to even do that base level manufacturing.
Right.
Okay. So, look, I'll just throw to you for a moment, Steve.
Yeah, look, I think one of the other things, that was an important consideration, and particularly for producers, is what we call, market diversification. So, at the moment, our mangoes are fresh to market. Our cattle get on a ship and get exported to Indonesia. Now, again, some of your listeners may be aware of the fact that we talk about an issue called biosecurity. Mm-hmm. So Northern Australia is really on the front line of any potential future biosecurity threat. Australia is probably unique. We don't have the major biosecurity issues that affect our partners to the north. Yep. Okay, we're talking about bird flu in Victoria at the moment. That what's happening there at the moment just shows you how devastating a new pest or a new disease can be. And we're talking hundreds, if not millions, of chickens being. So, we work very hard. The government, the university, Commonwealth and Territory government work very hard to keep things like foot and mouth disease. There's a particular disease of cattle that's been in the media called lumpy skin disease. They've got it in Bali, they've got it in Indonesia, whatever. And the reason I say this is if those diseases did get into Australia, that will temporarily halt the live export industry.
Yep. Well, actually, most livestock export produce from Australia or fresh produce.
Yep. So the industry is aware of this, and the industry is very much saying, okay, well, we do need alternative routes to market. So rather than a cow getting on a boat, it's a steak in a vacuum sealed bag, all that sort of thing. Yep. So we're not saying that what we're talking about here is in any way replacing the existing markets, because those markets are extremely profitable. Mm-hmm. They're well developed. Yep. But it's an option for additional income and value from that material that doesn't get to market, as we've discussed, or if something happens with the current supply chain. So there's an alternative there into the future.
So if you're processing to shelf stable, you're processing to a sterile product.
Right.
So even if we did have a livestock exotic disease incursion, right, that would hold exports of many of our animal commodities from the country, processed or live. If you're processing to shelf stable, a sterile product, you've got the ability to still cross borders.
Yep.
Right. It gives you a capability that to be able to continue to stay in business.
Yep.
And as I said, we're talking about quality products here now. Like, we're not talking spam in a can. We're not talking about tin corned beef.
Yep.
Right. Now Australia's been a bit slow to catch on here, but this is actually a growing market internationally. High quality steaks. We had the example of lamb shanks and that sort of thing.
Yep.
Now you've seen them. They're all packaged. They're sterile in a slow cooked package, and they can be kept on the shelf, in the pantry, so to speak. Now, we do have some sort of examples of that in our supermarket shelves. Now we have long life pasteurised foods,
right,
like meats, like that Woolworths and Coles might stock, but they generally run to probably about 7 degrees and last 90 to 120 days, right? But this is going the extra step from pasteurised to actually a sterile product. And we have the ability to do that. There's no doubt about that.
So can you maybe explain in simple terms the technology that you guys are using for this project and how maybe it differs from what's been done in the past or what sort of we've already got?
Well, I'm not the food tech here, okay, but I work with the food tech. Maybe that's a really good opportunity, a segue to get one of our food techs from the project on here in the future.
Yep.
If I can just jump in there, I think it's we've talked a lot about CDU, but I also want to acknowledge the partners that were part of this project.
Sure.
So CSIRO, and they've got a really great food technology group over on the East Coast. They were a partner. And the other key partner was the University of Tasmania, who has a advanced food tech lab. So, we were working with those guys. They're the guys that really, really know about the food technology. But I mean, I think we've got a layperson's understanding, Warren.
Yeah, we've got a layperson's understanding. So like,
I think you referred to retort. Was it retort systems?
Retort basically is a combination of heat and pressure.
Right.
Okay. It's akin to autoclaving, as we do with sterilisation of instruments and that sort of thing.
Sure.
Right? The old traditional system was you put the meat in the can or whatever and you boiled it, right? You expose it to heat for X period of time, and that X temperature, X period of time. And retort's not that different, but it's more advanced. It combines systems like pressure.
Yep.
So if you've got something encased, sealed in an impervious plastic, right? It combines both pressure and heat at the same time, right, to get that sterile end. It's taken a lot of research over the years to end up at that point. But what you invariably end up with is superior food quality outcomes, food sensory outcomes.
So that's taste and smell.
That's right.
Smell
Yeah, that's right.
That's very important.
You're not just ending up with mush.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're ending up with a good quality product. And so that opens up the opportunities, and it's happening overseas now. Like long life, shelf stable, poultry products, steaks, lamb products.
I think one of the really exciting technologies for me, I'm a microbial biochemist, so what do I know about food technology? Is a relatively new technique called microwave sterilisation, which achieves those stay ends using microwaves, like your microwave oven. But it doesn't, boil things, it doesn't heat them.
Right.
Probably one of the key things, and Warren's alluded to this, is the taste, the texture. But one of the key things about these new technologies is they maintain the nutritional value of the food.
Yep.
Pretty much to the same as the fresh meat. So a microwave sterilised steak jump in if I'm wrong here, Warren. A microwave sterilised steak in a plastic packet that can sit on the shelf for 12 months has probably got very, very similar nutritional value, vitamins, iron, all that sort of thing. To, you know, one you go buy at your local butchers in Nightcliff shops or whatever.
And then you can charge a premium. You can charge a premium, can't you? So then it commercially starts to become more viable. So
if you're running an abattoir and you're selling your manufacturing meat, your mince, your diced meats, that sort of thing, for $7 a kilo wholesale, well, perhaps you can also be running a facility that value adds it, and you can double that or treble that price. That's where the opportunity lies.
So what's the model that we're following here? Has this type of thing been done before anywhere in Australia, globally? You know, how do we sort of know? Well, we don't know that it's going to work, but do we have something that we can look to that can maybe set a bit of an example?
Well, I think the pathway is this, right? Jumping in boots and all into something is a profoundly risky proposition.
Well, the territory is littered with failed economic projects, unfortunately.
So the wise thing to do, and we actually see this with our local farmers here that have been very successful. You start smaller and you get bigger. I think some of our Asian farmers in the horticulture sector are excellent examples of that. And there's a cost to learning. So if we're going to get into the food processing business, and make no mistake, this is a sophisticated business, right? And there's no room for error. I mean, there is no room for error.
Right.
Otherwise you ruin your name and your brand. Right, so what you do is you start small, you get big, and the way to start small is with a pilot facility.
Right.
Piloting a facility is what is other governments have done. And universities have done. Look, Steve, you want to speak to that one a bit?
I mean, Warren's right. There's a publicly available report that came out of this project where it's got all the market analysis. I think it's on the CDU website. If it's not, it probably should be. And
it will be after this.
We've done the market analysis. We've shown that there's a potential for the industry. So as Warren says, yes, it is working commercially overseas, these sorts of things. Right. There are some products being produced in Australia. Western Australia have just built what they call it the Peel Harvey Food Tech Precinct or something like that, I think, isn't it?
Food Innovation Precinct, Western Australia.
In WA, so it's just south of Perth. Murdoch University is a partner in that. So, there are precedents there, and we've certainly been talking to the people down there about this. You do need to develop something locally. So part of this project was to look at the design and the cost of establishing a pilot plan here in Darwin. But it's not just as simple as saying, right, we're going to establish a plant. You've also got to train a workforce as well. Which is sort of, CDU's role is to do the research, train the workforce. And being a dual sector university, obviously we go everything from a Cert 1 in vet through to a PhD. So training the workforce, so that integrated approach. But, until you're at that point where you can say, okay, we need to invest in a pilot plan, and that's not CDU's role to do that. Okay, we are a university. That's really down to industry and to, I suppose, a degree government to say, okay, we can see there's economic value, there's market value in investing in this, and sort of, that's where we've got to. We've got to the stage where the project is delivered, the project's now finished. As I said, we're going to do a little bit more work, but the project as a whole is finished, and it really is saying, if we, and when I say we, it's really the industry and the government, as I've said, believe that this is of economic value, and the commercial food processing sector are going, well, at the end of the day, they've got to make a buck out of this. They're private companies, they've got to keep their shareholders happy. Then maybe we will go forward. But the ball is really, really in their court now. And I don't know if you want to say any more about that, Warren.
No, look, I think now the next step is probably to do some more background in terms of the macroeconomic effects. Yeah, we have a good understanding of what a pilot looks like now.
Yep. So what does a pilot, in terms of, because I think you can, the word pilot can sort of be
it's no small thing.
That's right.
It's no small thing.
Be a bit of a misnomer.
Right.
A pilot to some people might be a completely different thing. What sort of capex are
when
we
you're getting
$15,
into this,
$20 million.
yeah.
And that's
That's
not small bickies.
No, absolutely.
So,
but we're not setting up a kitchen here.
Yeah.
Right, it's a food manufacturing facility.
Yep.
And it's one to shelf stable, which
Right.
is another level of sophistication.
The sophistication here is you need to set up a pilot facility that can handle multiple products. So
Yes.
it can do meat, it can do mangoes,
Right.
it can do vegetables. The other part of this is it's not just a processing facility; it's also a training facility. Because You've got to train your workforce.
Yep.
So it's a significant investment, and as I say, it's really, we've worked with industry. I think it's fair to say there's some interest out there, but that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for anybody to risk.
Yep.
In terms of establishing a very new industry sector. And,
Right.
maybe this is something that's not going to happen now, but, a few years down the track,
Yep.
it might happen. But what we've done here is we've done that foundation work.
Yep.
So that, I don't know, a Bird's Eye or, a Goodman Fielder or one of the big multinational, okay, well, look, this report was done, it's shown the background, it gives us an initial degree of confidence that there might be something in this.
Yep.
And that's really our role. That's what our role is.
Yep.
I think it's important to note that also as part of this project, we had PhD students working on it, a number of our academics being exposed to a new area. So our marketing professors at CDU, worked on part of this. So it has built the capability to a certain extent in the territory around food processing and shelf-stable foods and that sort of thing. So, I'm very proud of what we did here because we literally took this thing from scratch, didn't we?
Oh, it started from nothing.
And I think a lot of
and we knew nothing.
And we knew nothing. And I think, very much I want to, make note of the fact that Warren was the project leader.
Yep.
And we brought Warren over to the university for a period of time from his role in Northern Territory government to actually lead this project, and he did an incredible job. So
Yep.
a lot of the, reason why this has been successful is Warren's leadership of the project. But yeah, look, really we've done we've taken this as far as we can. It's really down to third parties, which we're very happy to work with going forward to take this to the next stage.
Right. So in terms of taking it from where it's at currently to then getting private equity into it, which it sounds like is what needs to happen. To bridge that divide, what do you do? Do you take this report and do you take it to market? Is it a sort of a marketing tool that you're able to use, or is it?
It's not really a marketing tool. I mean, the report has been widely circulated around the relevant industry here in the territory.
Yep.
Around the Northern Territory government. In fact, I was meeting with one of our investment directors from Invest NT the other day and was talking to them about this.
Yep.
So when, I think they're on some NT investment trip overseas next week, they're taking copies of the report with them. So it's really about, more than anything else, it's actually about more broadly socialising the outcomes of the project through that report. Certainly socialising it around the research community. So a lot of the, academics involved were publishing papers. They're giving, keynote papers at various food processing conferences.
Yep.
So it's really just getting that message out there now.
Okay.
It's certainly not, shovel ready, let's build a pilot plant tomorrow. There's a hell of a lot more work to do.
Right.
Just to give you an indication of what we're talking about with scale. Okay, like the numbers sound big, like 20 odd million to stand up a facility.
Yep.
But to have a facility, it's a lot of stainless steel. It's laboratories you got to have there too. It's cool rooms and all that sort of thing, right? And on a pilot, it's just that. The volumes you're talking about, you're producing pallets of products, not trailer loads of products. You're producing pallets that you are testing in terms of the food safety.
Mm-hmm.
You're producing different foods that will be, and recipes that will be acceptable for whoever, whatever market you want to look at. And so you're talking probably a volume of 70 or 80 tonnes a year. It's very modest.
Right.
But here's the rub. That same footprint, if you work out eventually where the winners are from your work, from your research and your market and product work, the uptick is you can pull out the pilot lines and you can simply replace them with commercial lines or smaller scale commercial lines.
Right.
And so instead of processing 70 or 80 tonnes a year, you'll be commercially you'll be able to put through, say, 100 tonnes of feedstock a week.
Right.
That's when you're at commercial scale. Of course, there's bigger plants than that in Australia that are doing some of these other meals and that. But the thing is, that's the sort of volume you're looking at for commerciality. And can we do that? Yeah, we do have the feedstocks to be able to support that.
Sure.
Yeah, even if from frozen some of the times. And so there's more work to be done here. But we've actually made a pretty good inroad into understanding the space.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things about the pilot plant that we're talking about is you don't know what sort of market, so retail market you've got until you can test the product in the marketplace. So, Professor Steve Greenland at Charles Darwin Uni is probably one of the leading market research academics, certainly in Australia. Spent a lot of his working career actually working in the commercial market research sector, so he knows his stuff.
Yep.
And he did some of the initial market research studies as part of the business case we've developed.
Yep.
But, he would say to Warren and I said, well, I can only take this so far.
Yep.
Unless I can get a focus group sitting around a table and I can put a bunch of this stuff in front of them, I really don't know what the market acceptance is going to be. So that's the other reason for the pilot plant is it starts to give you producing whatever.
Yep.
And you're able to test that with people in the marketplace through standard market research techniques.
Yep. It sounds like this type of project can support existing industries within the territory. Like you talked about all the feedstock that we already have, horticulture, livestock, that sort of thing. Is there any opportunity for this to unlock new industries? Research that.
I think. Well, I think I did allude to that earlier when I talked about, the example of Tasmania, for instance, where if you're now value adding to product, you actually grow the opportunities for new agricultural production.
Yep.
So you expand the area under production. You maybe move to new crops, and I think things like vegetable crops in Central Australia. Certainly, Singleton Station, which is the large. Plans north of Alice Springs is looking at things like tangerines and mandarins as a crop there.
Yep.
Again, they're supplying fresh to market, but they can supply market counter timing to the south.
Yep.
It's certainly, the study certainly shows the potential to drive increased agricultural production.
Yep.
Obviously, that needs to be done in a sustainable manner, and we need to manage our water resources and that sort of thing. And we, at CDU, we have research teams that are involved in that sort of work. It potentially, and again, correct if I'm wrong, Warren, one of the things we looked at is, Warren talked about bycatch.
Yep.
So bycatch in the fishing industry.
We don't understand how much of it is going over the side.
Yeah.
We don't understand the species.
There are some projects that
underway now.
Underway at CDU.
Yeah, so that's more research that needs to be done to gauge what that looks like. Yeah.
Exactly. What does that look like?
Yep.
So I think in terms of answering your question, yes, there's a potential to grow the variety of agricultural production.
Yep.
There is the opportunity to be utilising, bycatch in the fishing industry, which currently just, goes back in the ocean. And again, you know, we've got a, you know, really exciting new oyster industry developing in Northern Australia. So Pacific black-lipped oysters is now really moving to that commercial stage.
Right.
Almost exclusively, these businesses are First Nations businesses around the coast.
Yep.
Now, yeah, you can get, you know, fresh oysters to market, but you can also shelf-stable oysters, and they've still got, you know, that fresh. So, you know, it's just, again, expanding potential market opportunities for, and, you know, we have I sit on a agribusiness 2030 strategy group with the Northern Territory Government. You know, we have a strategy to grow the value of our agricultural production to $2 billion by 2030. Currently, it's sitting about 1.3, 1.4-ish.
Yep. And is the bulk of that in cattle? Is that
over $1 billion of that would be in cattle?
Wow.
So really, that market growth is really going to be driven by the plant sector.
Right.
Cotton, you know, we've got a significantly expanding cotton industry down in the Douglas Daly, the new gin at Catherine's operating, which also produces another product, which is, you know, cottonseed going into cattle feed and fish feed and cottonseed oil and that sort of thing.
There's also the prospect of low or nil gossipol cottonseed too. You can have cottonseed oil for human consumption in the future. Right. Those varieties do exist.
Yep.
So I think that was one of the key premises of this study, is that understanding that if we were to develop something like this, it would actually, you know, provide an opportunity for the sector to grow.
Yep. Say tomorrow an angel investor comes from the heavens and the project is shovel ready. Is the Territory in a position for this type of development to happen right now, in your mind, or is it something that needs to be built up? Do we need to build work, you know, labour, financial, technical expertise, that sort of thing?
In terms of a pilot plan, you know, if someone walked into my office tomorrow at CDU and said, "Here's $20 million, build a pilot plant," well, I'd give it back to them and say, "Right, you get the industry to do it,
right? But
we'll work with you on it." You know, I think we do have the expertise, and this project showed we got the expertise.
Yep.
But one of the things at CDU, you know, our vision is to be Australia's most connected university, because we recognise we're small and we're isolated. So I think certainly, you know, right across our various portfolios at CDU, we're very well connected. We have very good partnerships. And if the expertise isn't here, we'll partner with CSIRO. We'll partner with the University of Tasmania.
Co-investment is the name of it.
You know, so I would be confident that pretty quickly we could get this thing up and running.
Yep.
And then by partnering with those other institutions, I'd certainly, from a CDU point of view, would be wanting to see in the research area. I'd be putting PhD students onto this.
Yep.
You know, we could be looking at developing new vet courses if the market demand is there.
Yep.
So, you know, we would be using the pilot facility as we're, you know, going through, you know, the pathway to potential market to grow our local workforce.
Right.
As an example, like the Western Australians, at their Peel facility, they're partnered with Murdoch Uni. Now, they've gone from 0 food science to 100 undergraduate students in the first year or two.
Wow.
Right, so it's really quite an achievement, right? So, like it's a space where there's jobs. It's a place where there's value growth. We play to our advantages. You know, work out where our strengths are. But the only way to do that, the pathway to commerciality, is a pilot.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we can look at a lot of other, you know, emerging industries in the Territory. You know, if you said, do we have the expertise to be able to develop an unconventional gas resource in the Beetaloo? Well, 10 years probably not, but we do now.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, a joint. It's a combination of people fly in, fly out, but there's also a developing local workforce.
Yep.
So there's many other examples where if the opportunity is there, you invest in developing that workforce.
Right.
Our biggest issue that we all know is just attracting people to Northern Australia, and
Yep.
we're all acutely aware of the challenges that we face in that respect.
So we've got a looming election in August. I mean, obviously the research on this has been done, so it doesn't jeopardise that aspect of the project per se.
Well, can I just interrupt you there?
Sure.
The research has been done on establishing a potential business case
Sure. Okay.
for, a pilot plant in the industry.
All right,
Sorry,
well, that doesn't really change my question then.
Yeah.
So, say we have a change of government, do you see anything or change of government a risk to the full development of this type of project? I'm not picking governments specifically, but does that have any implications for you guys, or are there things you'd like to see from a pro-development government that might come in?
So I'll talk from the university's point of view. CDU is a bipartisan. University is a bipartisan institution.
Sure.
We will work with whoever is, whatever government is in at the time,
Yep.
and we will partner with them. CDU has an extremely good relationship with the Northern Territory government, irrespective of what party's in power. We have a CDU-NTG partnership agreement. In fact, there wouldn't be a jurisdiction in Australia where the university and the state territory government has the same relationship as CDU does with the NT, because we are the only university in a very small jurisdiction. So I don't think there's any issues with change of government. I mean, we're talking to both the major parties at the moment.
Sure.
And in fact, we have identified food processing and food tech as being something that we'd be keen to work with either side of government on moving forward. So we are having and have had those conversations with both sides of politics. So
right.
Personally, I don't see any major issues there.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I'm a public servant. I'm a neutral party here on this one.
You better shut up.
If we could just quickly, you mentioned there was, there's scope for a research institute. I think that was the other project you mentioned. Is that right?
So we've established the RINA, which is the Research Institute for Northern Australia.
Right.
So we were actually successful through a competitive Commonwealth Government grants program to secure just under $5 million from the Commonwealth Government to establish this new research institute.
Right.
That was 2021, I think.
Okay.
CDU also invested, probably $1.5 million of cash and in kind to it. So we now have 4 new research professors. So we have Maxine Piggott, who is a professor of biosecurity, Sunil Kadri, who's a professor of aquaculture, Stephen Zhu, who's a professor of plant-based cropping systems, horticulture and broadacre, and then Beth Penrose, who is an associate professor in cattle production systems.
Yep.
So those guys are all on board. I think we've probably got about 10 PhD students working in RINA at the moment.
Yep.
A large number, I can't remember, the exact figure, but significant number of externally funded projects across the board. So, we're 2 years in, 2.5 years in, and, from my point of view as the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research, I am very pleased with the way that institute is progressing.
Yep.
We are a partner in a new national research, what's called a cooperative research centre, which is the cooperative research centre for net zero agriculture. So it's a large, probably $110 million joint industry, academia and Commonwealth Government program, basically to move Australian agriculture to be a net zero greenhouse gas emitter by 2040,
right.
2045.
Yep.
So we're part of that. Now, we wouldn't have been able to be part of that if we hadn't established the new research institute.
Okay.
One of the things that I'm particularly excited about is we're looking at developing a master's degree in tropical agriculture.
Okay.
There isn't one. There isn't one in Australia. There are a lot of agricultural degrees that do a bit of tropical agriculture.
So even across Queensland and those sorts of...
Not really, no.
Wow.
No,
Okay.
no. So this is very specifically in sort of, north of the 800 millimetre rainfall line.
Right.
Both, all three areas, aquaculture, cropping and cattle.
Yep.
And we think there's considerable opportunity there in Southeast Asia.
Yep.
We're very active in Timor-Leste within the agricultural sector now. So we work on a major multi-million-dollar Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, which is part of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade on a project in Timor-Leste. We're looking at assisting them in developing their agricultural sector because 40% of people in Timor-Leste are malnourished.
Right.
They cannot grow enough rice to feed their population. I mean, they're a very poor country, so they can't really be and at CDU, Timor Dili is 50 minutes away, so we're very strongly partnering with Timor-Leste across a range of different areas, but certainly agriculture and fisheries are two of those key areas that we're working with our colleagues in Timor-Leste on.
Fantastic.
It's about creating an academic home for tropical agriculture in Australia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is there any other initiatives that you'd like to spruik on here?
I think if we keep, so let's keep it to, I suppose, agriculture. I suppose the only other area that may be relevant and your listeners might be interested in is within our Research Institute for Environment and Livelihoods.
Yep.
We work very, very closely with the crocodile industry here in the territory.
Is that with Graham Webb and
with Graham Webb?
Yeah, we had him on the podcast.
Oh, did you?
Fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're actually, this is really hot off the press. We've sort of taken the initiative to really talk broadly across the industry to look at maybe creating a centre of excellence in crocodile research and crocodile ecology based here in Darwin.
Right.
So it's not just CDU, it's Graham Webb, it's a whole bunch of other people. I didn't realise this until recently, and it came as a shock to me. But those large fashion houses like Hermes and Louis Vuitton actually have significant interests in the crocodile farms here in the Northern Territory. So. Yeah, look, that's something that I'm pretty excited about because we've got some great people at CDU in that area and a lot of other people around. Darwin, in fact, hosted a recent United Nations crocodile conference.
Yep.
Graham may have spoke about that when he was on here. So I think that's something else, in that broader, agriculture, primary production area that is pretty exciting.
Fantastic. All right, well, we might leave it there then, gentlemen. Cool. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Warren. Appreciate your time.
Stu.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone.